How's it going, Higherside chatters? You know me, drinking a little drink and smoking a little smoke. I'm Greg Carlwood, just trying to get my chemicals balanced enough to see through the illusions of life, and today is a great show for that. I had mentioned we have a real wild one coming up, and we do, but I had planned to get a little update from Crrow, and it turned into a full episode. Definitely exceeded my expectations. We recorded it today, and I was so anxious to get it out. I worked all afternoon to have it ready, and now here we are. It's just such a good vibe. I feel like it's two good friends catching up on conspiracy themes, even though we just met last month. But we talk about the lunar wave, the research of Hattie Bow, ancient archetypes, magic, space, and everything in between. It really is quite a can of worms, and I really don't need to waste any more time before getting to the good stuff. If you missed the first show I did with Crrow, I think you have to go back 3 episodes if you want to get the larger context. But with that said, let's dive into all aspects of the big conspiracy puzzle with the jigsaw master himself, my man Crrow.
Sweet dreams to the elite. We're calling them out on THC, uncovering secrets and conspiracies. Everybody's looking for something. Some of them want to use you. Some of them want to get used by you. Some of them want to abuse you. Some of them want to be abused.
Alright people, you should remember Crrow from just a few episodes ago where we talked about the orbs, UFOs, and of course the lunar wave that he's been capturing and sharing with the world via YouTube on his channel at Crrow777, that's with 2 R's. I thought it was a great show, and in the time since we've done that episode, some really interesting new information has surfaced, and today's the day after the equinox and the eclipse, which I thought would be another good reason to reconnect for a little update. So let's do it. Crrow, my man, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I really love the show we did. I get messages every day about it, and as you know, we had someone who listened to it. They called in and brought it up on Ground Zero with Clyde Lewis, and then 2 days later, boom, you were on there. And I love how that unfolded too, but seriously, it's got a lot of people talking, man.
Yeah, that was pretty fortuitous because the way that went down, now that I can look back in hindsight, was that a caller that had seen your show called in, but he was a little bit off topic, which typically means he wouldn't get on the air. So a producer named Tracy forced him on the air, even though he was a bit off topic. And just by chance, that was the producer who I ended up talking to that got me on the show. So yeah, the whole thing, put it this way, the stars kind of aligned.
Yeah, it's awesome. I like to see the new attention that's getting paid to you. You had 20,000 subscribers or over before we even talked. But as far as interviews go, I think people are now hearing you instead of just seeing the lunar wave, and they're very interested in the stuff you have to say. But, last night I couldn't even see the supermoon, and we hear a lot about how the elite like to coordinate events with these types of lunar cycles. But the news seems pretty quiet today from as far as I can tell. Did anything in this 24-hour period of the eclipse and the equinox lining up, did anything strike you as interesting?
Yeah, of course, because I know what I know about what we're looking at and have looked at for so long, assuming that these things are as we have been told they are. They are not as we have been told. I demonstrated that in clips when there were lunar eclipses last year. Right around the equinox. I think it was March 14. And again, we saw these weird numbers. It was like, maybe it was April 14 or something was the date. But anyhow, to address the one we just had, first of all, it's a new moon, which means it's blacked out from its position. And whether you want to buy into how all that works or not, the point is the face we see is not lit. So it's very close to the sun or in the glare of the sun. So you can't really get a good look at it, which is interesting because in the eclipses that I've filmed recently, I surmised that if that sun is backlighting an object, why the hell can't I see it coming into the sun, which you cannot. Not until it breaks the limb of the sun can you see it. And I tried everything. I tried light obliteration techniques. I tried different filters. I wonder what spectral shooting would do, if we could shoot in different spectrums. I think there might be some real dividends there. But some people were pinging me yesterday in areas that could see the eclipse. It's parts of the UK. I don't remember if it was Scandinavia or Iceland, but areas over there. And almost to a person, they said that their view was obscured by weather, although we did get some footage. Now, a person sent me a video that showed stills taken, and it looked like it might have been shot in more than just visual spectrum. But when I did the moon illusion clip, I brought up all these reports from the 17 and 1800s about people witnessing stars not being occulted by the moon, but shining through. Jupiter did this. And they also mentioned, and this is a frequent report, that during a partial solar eclipse, you can see the sun through the moon, the limb. And so yesterday, I put up a clip that shows a still of maybe what we're talking about here. It looks like it to me. I drew a perfect circle around the moon, and since the moon should be the same size as the sun because of this bizarre system we see, I replicated that circle, changed the color, put one circle around the sun, one around the moon, and you do, in fact, see a perfectly round edge of the sun behind the moon. I'm sure a lot of people are going to come up with Einstein's lensing and all these other things, but for my money, that's not what's going on here. And I think we have enough reports of a transparent moon reported that have been stifled over the years, even people defamed, that I am truly convinced that if we all go out and pay attention during these eclipses, shoot in UV, IR, or even just visible light, that we will see things that, frankly, we couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I watched those clips. They are so fascinating, and it's so odd to think that you could see stars through the moon or you can see the sun through it during the eclipse, because we're told it's a solid rock, a giant ball of rock, and that's clearly can't be the case if we're seeing things through it.
That's right. And so, you know, in a vacuum with just that information, I think it's going to be common human sense to argue that something else is going on. But with everything else that we've come to know recently, and I've come to know more than I've got on film, and that's problematic because if you say these things, people think you're pushing an agenda if you don't have something to back it up with. So while I keep these things to myself, I understand what it all means, or I'm beginning to understand what it all means. And, you know, that it's not a rock that you're looking at up there. That's all there is to it. We've been lied to for a long time. And for people who understand the deception on a massive level that we see down here with like Sandy Hook, or those who have come to understand what 9/11 really was, nothing like we were told. The moon landings that are scientifically proven. There's a PhD out of Ukraine who's put up a parallax experiment on all the NASA images, and he's proven that he can show the mountain range behind these guys is a few hundred meters, not 5 kilometers. He shows all kinds of stuff, and it's backed by math and using the parallax method. Flat out, they faked it, and there's no getting away from that. When you understand the scope of the deception of our lives that we have grown up with, thinking that the world is one way, when in fact, it is not the way you have been told, you have to start to take the macro view. And what you will find, I believe, what I have found, is there's no edges to this. Look at Sandy Hook. That's a microscopic view. Look at any of these events that we see weekly now that are made up in the media. There's no edge to the deception. You look up to the stars, you're still looking at the same ball of wax. And that's where I'm at.
Yeah, man, the illusion is everywhere. And on top of yesterday's clip, you've put up several new videos since we last talked. One of them was shadow craft that looked pretty interesting. What's the deal with that one?
So what I was questioning there was in reference to the Russian research from a man I believe is called Higherside, and I'm probably mangling that in English. It may be something more like Kativ. I will just say Higherside because I don't know how to better understand what was written in Russian. But he talks about these autonomous and some manned craft, the way he puts it. And let me preface all this by saying the part of that research that is important to me is what lines up perfectly with my research on the lunar wave. The rest of it is very interesting, and I will not discard it, but I can't vet it. But to get back to the shadow ships, Higherside claims that there is a mostly autonomous system maintaining this illusion that is behind what I would call the lunar wave, and it's referred to as a hologram, but that's really not the right word. It's technology far beyond a hologram. But these ships, some of which apparently he claims are manned, I don't know about that, are called shadow ships, and it's because of the way they look. Now, if you go back through my hundreds of clips, or just under 200 clips, I'm not sure where I'm at actually, maybe 150, you will see many things filmed transiting the moon that fit this description. For a long time in the early days of filming, we wrote them off as birds. And as we got more experience and began to understand these things are in perfectly straight trajectories, and we'd filmed so many bats and birds, and frankly, there's not that many bats and birds in San Diego to film. It's not an every night event. But if you draw a straight line, you realize these are perfectly ruler straight trajectories these things are on. They're some kind of an object. And so I'm questioning if what I'm picking up is what Hattie Bao is referring to as the shadow ships. So that's the connection.
Yeah, and this Russian research seems to be probably the biggest deal that's happened since we did the show. Can you give us some context for this? How did this get to you?
Okay, so I think it was actually sent to me. I'm an anti-Facebook guy, by the way. I can't stand data collection, and I have a technical degree. I understand what Facebook is for, and it's not for our convenience. So while I am there, I do not communicate there. I think this was sent to me way back, and then when I went back to look at it, I couldn't find it. And so I had an old email account, and it was many months this was sent, and I just wasn't using that account, and it had an anonymous send. So I looked at it, and I realized this looks like the thing I glanced at on Facebook way back. So I started looking and translating and Bing and everything. So the importance of that research to me is on a few levels, but the stuff that I will stand behind is where it lines up with my lunar research. The rest of it, I can't vet. I never held secret government positions. I'm not an initiate of some secret society, so I can't really reference a lot of what he says in any meaningful way. But what happened was there was a chat room that was a bit like maybe a European-style Facebook where some Russian folks were chatting, and lo and behold, there was the word lunar hologram. And so I perked up, and when I saw that, I read the whole thing where they were talking about how the Americans had faked the space landing. It was done in Hollywood, and they referenced more than once the lunar hologram. So there was a link in there to Hattie Bao's research, which is my initial introduction to him. When I went over there, I started reading through, and so these are the key points that lined up with what I knew. When I first filmed the wave and came to understand what I thought it might be, I was saying, we need to look near a full moon. I was saying, it's critical, the equinoxes are critical in this. I filmed the 2012 footage a couple days after the fall equinox. So, I saw people talking about a lunar hologram wave who had never seen my research, I believe, and they referred me to a man who said, not only is it near the full moon, it's in the third phase of the moon. So he pinpointed it with scientific data around it. On top of that, he went into great lengths about the equinox. Now, this is the importance of the Russian research that I will stand behind and say it matches with what I had come to know. But his research goes way beyond. And, you know, just to put a fine point on it, I've read a lot of other stuff this man has read, and the translations make it difficult. But at some point, it appears someone who is doing a biography on him states his research was forced to be handed over against his will to Israel. And there was an oil company involved. And when I begin to read things like this, whether or not I can vet everything he's saying, I think it merits my attention. And that's what I'm giving it right now. So that's the story.
Wow, yeah, the fact that his material was handed over to Israel, I find that really compelling. I mean, there's been a lot of great alternative scientists and researchers that have lost their data to some shadowy elite organization or the CIA or the FBI, like Nikola Tesla.
Yep.
So that, to me, gives credibility to what's going on because it fits a deeper pattern. But do we know anything else about this guy, Hattie Bao? Anything about his career or how long it was or his education?
Yeah, you know, if you go into my Moon Illusion clip, there's a bunch of links, and while some of it you got to translate using Bing and Google, and I recommend you use both, it gets you close enough to begin to get the intent. Now, it's very technical work, so that's always going to be a problem because, I mean, he goes into octaves and all these other things, but the man had degrees I don't have it in front of me, so I don't want to say the wrong thing. Let's just put it this way. Across multiple sciences, he was well known, and it is a vast list that you will see if you go check out those links. But on top of it, some of my followers who are thinking people and have taken my advice, don't believe what I tell you, look into it for yourself, have given some of his work to physics people. And they said this man was a genius, but there's a problem because he's using like an angle or a calculation of some sort for like parsecs and light speed or something like that. Don't quote me. I think it might be parsecs. And they said his foundational angles or calculations doesn't seem to be backed up with what physicists in the accepted world use, which to me is fantastic. It underscores again a man who was not bound by what the textbooks tell you should believe, and he was off on his own, but what they further said was his calculations are spot on, but he's crazy because he's using wrong foundational angles and calculations. So these are physicists saying he got it right, but he did it wrong. And this goes on and on and on, but then his research goes into some areas that are, I mean, I don't even know how to address it, but when you read it, there's something about it that tells you don't discard this. You may never be able to vet this out or prove it in any way, but don't discard it. Always remember it. So there it is.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I looked over a lot of those documents this morning and last night, and they just open up a whole can of worms. You're right. A lot of this stuff can't be vetted. We won't ever have the ability. It's outside of our means to get that kind of information. But some of the stuff is just so wild. You mentioned octaves. What can you say about that? Did that make any sense to you? He's talking about sound in relation to this big illusion that we're involved in, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me because many, many years ago, I was looking at ancient writings, and you hear echoes, kind of corrupted echoes of this in the Kabbalion, the Emerald Tablets, and other things like this. But in all that, and again, you have stuff that can't be vetted, but you do have some truths, like everything is constantly moving, everything vibrates, and I think that relates directly to Hattie Bau's work in the octaves. And so it looks to me at this point, and I'm still trying to get technical people to get in there and understand the initial language it was written in and get it over into English, it looks to me like he's using that ancient formula of even a rock appears to be sitting still, but it is not. It is vibrating. Everything vibrates. It seems to be related to that. And if you look at the seven foundational principles that are found, and I don't remember whether it's the Kabbalion or the Emerald Tablets, but it is reiterated there: correspondence, rhythm, a version of karma, which isn't actually the karma from India, but basically comes down to the same thing. Every response gets a response. These things back up what I believe he is talking about in the octaves. And when you consider thinking on a level like that, where so many times we see the ancients having simplified things down. Well, everything vibrates. What more do you need to know? Where when we look back at modern day thing, it's like, no, well, modern physics tells you there's a particle zoo, and the theoretical guys are adding 100 of them a day because they need the weights of these imaginary particles to balance their calculations. It's getting more, convoluted all the time. Like with CERN, on NOVA, they ran a special announcing the God particle. It was the most painful program I've ever seen in my life. And you can just see the state of where things are, and you come to the conclusion that CERN is not about particle smashing at all. It's about something else. But to get back to Hattie Bau and the octaves, I see a direct correlation to what I'm familiar with in ancient laws that are foundational to everything we know about where we live.
Yeah, man, I agree with you. That stuff comes up on the show all the time. The sound and frequency as it relates to all this other material. Again, there doesn't seem to be any seams in this illusion. It's everywhere, and it crosses many different topics. But another thing I saw in this research is he says that Easter is really important and the equinox is important. And I thought that, of course, should be brought up because we just dealt with it. We just had it. But I couldn't get much out of why. Again, you're right. It's so technical. It's written for scientists, which I am not, in a language that isn't my own. Trying to piece together sentences. It's not grammatically 100%. But what does it seem like, or what's the reasoning behind why he says Easter and the equinox seems to be so important?
Okay, so this is another area of what I read of Hattie Bow that I had come to know, and my past clips back me up. There was a time in my clips when I fully understood that the lunar wave had something to do with equinoxes that I began to push it on my channel. I had an opening slide showing a representation of the zodiac and the sun moving through it. Now, first of all, everyone should understand what an equinox and a solstice is. It is the true division of our calendar. January 1st is not the new year, and it never would have been had not Julius Caesar and Pope Gregory, I think the 13th, I think I've got that number right, I don't know. They hijacked our calendar. And what they're doing is they're pulling human beings out of their natural environment, and instead of having New Year's Day be on the vernal equinox, which was yesterday, which is the true natural new year for where we live, they pulled it back to January 1. Then Pope Gregory did a bunch of more shenanigans, left out a year zero. We got this bizarre month, February, that changes at will, and leap years, and all this other crazy stuff to ensure you will never recognize that time is very cyclical. Having said that, when we come into the vernal equinox, the earth is about to explode with energy, and anyone can witness this to go out and look at the fruit on the trees, the bloom on every growing thing, the greenery, just the explosion of life at this time of year. Now, this carries up to the first full moon past the vernal equinox, which is Easter. Now, Easter is a very funny thing. Even in the modern age, they place it using what's called a solar luni calendar. So to put that in reference for folks, in the West, we're very sun-oriented. You know, our calendars are sun-based. Our church goes on Sunday, sun, sun, sun. In the East, a lot of people are still on lunar calendars. And while I'm not going to draw a distinction between these two things, I will tell you that on Easter, these two forms of creating a time measurement system have been brought together to put Easter. Now, what's funny about this Easter, and you can see the sun influence for us in the West, is that it's actually not going to happen on the full moon because it's been pulled, I think, 1 day or 2 days away to happen on the day of the sun, Sun Day. So in this time, according to Hattie Bow's research, there is all this available energy that they can use, and it sounds like he's saying to send signals or communications or something to that effect. And again, we'll have to wait till the translation and the knowledge of the translator gets better. He's saying all the way up 3 months past this, which to me means roughly the summer solstice. Now, at the summer solstice, we have a season change again. The summer solstice is when the sun is at the height of its power. The day after that, the sun's power begins to decline all the way down to the fall equinox, and then we go into the allegory of hell, the old fire and ice thing. Whenever you read about hell and other things, it's often allegorying the time when the sun has fallen below the equator. At least that's what we are told is happening. And it's cold. You know, you can't grow things. You're going to have to kill animals. The true blood moon was at the fall equinox. That doesn't get used anymore. But in modern times, the media has lied to us, trying to pull that time when we're falling into winter or hell, when we have to kill animals, called the blood moon, over to the vernal equinox, where it has no place, because the vernal equinox is about happiness, rebirth, a new year. So you can kind of see the games that's played. But to answer your question, from the vernal equinox to roughly Easter, and then 3 months from the vernal equinox forward, there's all this available energy, and something is being done with it, although I can't tell you exactly what that is yet.
Man, that's wild. And it jives with so many things that we hear about with the elite. We're always trying to figure out on this show who's at the top of the pyramid. People talk about spiritual entities or archons or all kinds of like spiritual parasites. And I've had guests in the past talk about the Vatican's role in this big Triple Crown control situation. And their role is harvesting energy, or some people will say harvesting souls if they want to put that context on it. But to me, it's essentially the same thing. Harvesting energy for dark entities or for dark purposes. And that a big part of why they're so big into having their observatories. And for so many years in history, they were the go-to place. They were on the forefront of that, is because they're involved in using this energy. And this ties in space stuff with religion stuff and ancient ideas and magic. It's a trippy thing, but the Vatican seems, when you get past the surface layer, it seems like a dark place where dark people are doing occult stuff. And maybe there's a connection to this, but I love that it's coming up in scientific research.
Yeah, the Vatican was never about helping people. It was never the mission of the Vatican. You're looking at men dressed in black wearing fish hats from the age of Pisces, and nun. The word nun, which started the Vatican, that's a Hebrew word for fish. This is a throwback from the age of Pisces, I believe. But my point is, even if that's not exactly spot on, these men have never been here to help you. They have marginalized women on this planet, which is a big, big problem for us. Women make up 50% of the spiritual and human nature of this planet. And because of religion and other things, men have marginalized their role. And that's just another way to retard humanity, in the same way the calendar pulls us away from nature so that we will never realize what the Mayans apparently realized about the cyclical nature of time. These men do bad things, and they have put forward a worship that is cloaked in some very dark things. So there are a lot of people still influenced, trying to do the best they can, trying to do what's right, and they are being manipulated by men who have known from the beginning that what they are doing is benefiting no one but themselves. And I think you can even question what kind of a benefit that is when you're playing with dark stuff. It wouldn't be my benefit. It's not something I would choose to do.
Right, right. It seems like in some aspects it's a slippery slope, and once they go down that road, there's nothing to do but to continue it. And then you hear about people talking about, why do they give us coded messages or signals that a disaster is going to happen, or they're going to do a false flag or something. And then researchers have speculated that it's because if they give us the information, if they tell us they're going to do it, even if it's done on the down low, it frees them karmically or something. And again, it's really weird, but it gets into this idea that of energies and cause and effect and some kind of spiritual element. It's strange.
Yes. Well, what you do see is, if you see anyone who's famous these days, they're playing a game. They have agreed or been coerced or forced into a game that it seems like they can't get out of. And when you mention 11/11, you'll see something happen. 9/11, that'll be echoed for the rest of time down here unless something is stopped. You're looking at a system, and this system doesn't stop in the border of California or the border of England, right, or anywhere on this planet. It goes all the way up to everything we can see, and it is a system that has been timed. There will be events that happen that were timed long before they happen. They are numerically coded, but coded to the numbers we see, which have been perverted. Our calendars have been perverted. Our time is being perverted right now, because as we went into this all-important spring equinox, the rebirth time, our clock was changed to guarantee that our inner clock in our bodies is shifted out from nature again, and it'll happen again right at the fall equinox. All these efforts are designed to control us and to keep us basically in a form of retardation, to not be able to realize our human potential. And our human potential is vast, and it scares the crap out of them. But when you consider the system, you can almost visualize it like everything's like a computer program, and there's going to be a calendar alert. In 2 days, there's going to be a false flag in New York at this time, in this city, with this name, at this specific time of the day. And then as soon as it happens, all these other alerts are created saying that we've got to maintain this lie. Like the NASA moonshot. That's a lie that has to get maintained till the end of time. And so how does that get done? And the only conclusion you can draw is that there is literally a massive system, probably a supercomputer involved or something of that nature, that basically, like we open Outlook in the morning, it says you got a meeting today. When their Outlook opens, or whatever the heck it is, it tells them you got a false flag today, and by the way, you need to maintain the Paulo lie. It's like that.
Yeah, man, well said. That's funny. It's such dirty tricks. And you mentioned CERN. One thing I found interesting is this video that was posted on, I think it was on the Higherside Chat's Facebook page. Someone threw it on there. But there's a video of this recording of some weird performance art dance ritual at CERN. And of course, they say that this experiment to try to recreate the Big Bang is starting up today, right after the equinox, which to me is a very recognizable parallel kind of with the way NASA does similar occult things, especially with the naming of their rockets and projects. So it seems CERN, even though they're on they really are on a different side of the planet, different scientists altogether, a different organization. They're also into this weird occult stuff and making sure the dates line up with celestial events and the things that they're trying to do.
Well, I think what you just said for me has two sides of it. The whole CERN thing lines up with what Hattie Bow and what I know about equinoxes and solstices and why I realized it's a big damn deal that has been stolen from humanity. There's all this available energy, and lo and behold, CERN's firing up. Well, let me tell you something. The God particle, the Higgs boson, that is a sham. That is a cover, and they have diluted physics to the point where a science that should be simplifying to that one elegant equation, which would be the goal, I believe, is now run by theorists who have complicated it to a point where it's ridiculous. CERN is doing something else, and we see it firing up to make the Big Bang that supposedly created all this at the equinox with all this available energy. What's going on there? We can speculate all day, but in my mind, there is no doubt whatsoever that what Hattie Bow was trying to tell us people that aren't quite as brilliant as he is, that this time of the year matters and there is a lot of energy available. Now, to address the occult practices, what you're seeing is the whole humanity been told, pagans are bad people, the ancient people were stupid, they couldn't think like we did, but yet they are demonstrating in everything they do that the ancient people better understood the systems of this planet, using the Mayans as an example and understanding that their calendar to this day is more accurate than anything we're using. They are using those old ways, but it should be completely put out front that they're tools of understanding for the environment we are in right now, and you can misuse them or you can use them. Now, I feel that what they are hiding is my birthright, and I feel if I had that knowledge, I would try to benefit fellow human beings and animals and anything I could to try to undo this just age of deception we find ourselves in. But what I see them doing is the opposite. So what happens is people say, oh, look, they're doing bad things. That's a bad thing they're doing. I would say no. What they are doing is taking your birthright and misusing it to ensure you remain in prison and disconnected from nature.
Yeah, man, I think you were touching on something that's really an important point with this idea of complicating things just to get people all screwed up. A friend of mine and I were just talking about this, controlling people through ambiguity, whether it's laws or taxes or economics or the calendar itself and quantum physics and building codes and health codes. You make things so complex that the average person can't even really get involved, and then they have to look at authority for the answers. And it creates this situation where you can bend the laws, or you can always find a law or a tax thing that someone is avoiding. And if you want to really screw someone, you can just use that ambiguity, the fact that it is so complex, to exercise your authority. And it applies to almost every aspect of society and science and beyond.
Well, this is the system. I mean, when you go into a court, you're walking on to the bridge of a ship. You're being forced into basically admiralty or pirate law. And when you look at that man up there in the black robe, he is the magistrate, magi. He's performing magic on you. Mm-hmm. And what he is doing is ensuring that your potential as a human being will be squished like a bug under a boot. You don't need that man to tell you what you can do or what's allowed or what's permissible. You're a human being who has within you power that can be cultivated to a level that scares the crap out of these people. And you're just looking at another edge to the system that you cannot define, because everything is the system.
Well said, man. And to bring this back to some of this Russian material, another thing he talks about in there is that the moon is related to a hidden control system, and he mentions, the translation I was reading mentions some kind of connection to the sun as well, like a sun-moon control system. Have you gotten into the aspects of the sun at all to this thing?
Well, those of us who look at the deceptions of our time, a lot of us come to the conclusion that there's a 33 club, the number 3, 33, 333, 33333, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. I mean, it goes everywhere, how important the number 3 is. Now, I am not bashing religion. That's not what I do. Everyone, in my opinion, is free to worship as they choose. It's your right. What I am saying is there's clearly something very important about the number 3. And he claims that there were originally 3 moons. And again, these are things that I will never be able to vet, I don't believe. He said there were 3 moons, 2 of which were destroyed, and it seems like he's saying they were destroyed because someone had figured out something about the system of control in place. Now, the funny thing about that is if you say, okay, we had 3 moons, now we got 1, to get back to the number 3, you grab a sun and an earth, and you're back to 3. According to what I think he is saying, there is some direct connection between the sun and moon. He further says that the moon is emitting or reflecting no sunlight. He claims there is an outer surface and an inner surface, which relates directly to my lunar wave theory. The outer surface that we see is, while you can say hologram, illusion, whatever you want, it's not the right words, but it's not a ball of rock that you're looking at. But there's apparently, according to him, something behind it that is akin to a control center, and it seems like he's referencing something to do with a black cube, which we've heard endlessly for those of us who began looking at the deceptions of our rulers down here. But having said all that, the octave thing starts to play into what you've brought up here, because there seems to be some kind of an octave frequency type thing between sun and moon, and yet the sun is generating its own light somehow, according to him. Now, again, I can't vet these things, but I certainly will not dismiss them. I will keep on it and try to understand what the man was trying to say with a lesser brain, because let's face it, if I have a feeling if he was in a room with Sheldon Cooper, Sheldon would be the stupid one.
Yeah, man. And the black cube thing is interesting. We had that come up in a show I did about Saturn and the symbolism there. Apparently the One World Trade Tower that they've built in the footprint of the Twin Towers has a black cube there with a waterfall pouring over it. It also ties into the graduation cap, why we wear these square black hats. Really weird stuff, but it is so rooted, even in modern days. No one thinks about it. How many tens of thousands of kids are throwing on graduation caps and are just like, it's just a tradition. But it seems to be a lot deeper than just a tradition.
It is. It's showing that everything that you've been taught in school is their system, what they want you to learn. And people are going to be upset with what I'm about to say. But at this point, the water is frickin' boiling down here. I will no longer pull my punches. I will say what I think is going on. I hope I help in doing that. If I come up wrong, I'll own that. I will own it wholesale. I'm trying to do what I think is best, and I think our time for having the ability to do anything about it is constantly diminishing, and I think we see that in just the overt disregard of even the false flags. They don't care anymore. If you look back to the 50s, this stuff was very couched and hidden to a very sleepy audience. Well, the audience ain't so sleepy anymore, and yet it hasn't become more hidden. It's become more overt. When you look at school, what you have been taught is how to function within their system. You have been taught nothing about the system. But you better realize that those people that went to Skull and Bones or Harvard or Hogwarts, what's it called there in England, the one that looks like Hogwarts, you go to these places, there are certain, I guess, bloodlines or families that get the real education that not only tells you how to work within the system, but it tells you about the system. And that system has been hidden from 90-some% probably of this planet. And when you see those kids putting on that mortar board, Mason reference, they're squaring the circle. Mm-hmm. Your head's the circle, the mortar board's the square, and there's Saturnian references and all kinds of stuff. But the problem becomes, no one ever told us what Saturn means. Right. No one ever told us why a black cube is important. No one ever told us why these dates are important. No one ever told us why equinoxes and solstices are important. So here we are, babes in the wood, scrambling to try to catch up, basically. But we can see the deception now. So all I can say is the water's boiling, and if I sound more direct now, it's because people who have the ability to catch on need to catch on quick, and they need to start saying no. No to the magistrate, no to all these systems of control. They need to understand that they're human beings, and they have, whether they choose to view it as a God-given ability or a created ability, that far surpasses what they have been allowed to know about themselves. So That's what I see.
Man, I love it. I love the difference in tone since we last talked. I think it is just better. I just think it's more aggressive. I think that we've been wondering for a long time, and it's also not just because you've changed your tone, but you've gotten to see a lot more information. You've gotten more things backed up, which allows you to kind of push the needle a bit further. And coming back to that Russian research, one thing I read in a translation is when he's talking about the control system kind of, and he's bringing up the sun and the moon, there's a phrase, at least it was translated by Google, to say that they need an autonomous structure to control the system. And then it goes into showing some diagrams of the Great Pyramids, or talking about the Great Pyramids. I thought that was pretty wild. Of course, we always hear about the mystery behind what the pyramids are and what their purpose was. Maybe they're similar in age to our current moon or something.
Well, I think with the pyramids, it's pretty clear to most people who are on the planet that have looked, we can't build that.
Yeah.
With everything we've got, we can't build that. And not only can we not build it, again, we have not been told how the system works. The people who built that not only understood how the system worked, they were utilizing the natural energies at that point. Maybe it was a time before deception. I don't know. But what I can tell you is I believe Hattie Bao is trying to demonstrate that the openings on the pyramid were, and I forget, was it the North Star? Do you remember?
The North Star sounds right.
Well, I'm going to take a shot. I'm guessing right now because I don't remember the celestial, supposed celestial body, but I think he said the North Star, might be something else. And he's using it to demonstrate that things were different then because that opening was then aligned in some certain way that it is not now, and the angle was critical. I think that's what he's saying, but again, it's a lot of work to get into that level of science that's not accepted science, that was done in a different language. So I'll be working on that, but I believe he's using it as a milepost to show proof that as it was then, it is not now. And look, here is my proof. I think that's what he's going at.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Does it say anything about not being able to travel into outer space in there anywhere? Or have those thoughts of yours advanced at all?
I have seen nothing that allows me to believe we have ever been above low Earth orbit and survived. You can look at many mission patches that show this kind of grid around the planet. You can watch shows like Men in Black 3, where they're putting up the ArcNet around the planet. There was I think it was a lord or somebody important in the UK, I think. I can look this up at another point. I was going to reference him in a video, and I ended up referencing other people. When Sputnik was about to happen 6 months off, this man who was a scientist on sun level, may have been an astrophysicist and big in the Royal Academy of something, said in a pig's eye, basically, we can't leave this planet. And what happened was they announced Sputnik made it into orbit 6 months later, and people came back and defamed the man and said, you got to be careful what you put in writing. So again, I mean, look at me. I put up that I believe the moon is an illusion. I thought about it for many, many months before I came forward with this. I waited until the day I walked outside and I could feel the water boiling around me. And that's when I came forward, and luckily the Russian research kind of paralleled on certain levels. My point is they defame people that don't go with the system education. And the system education has walls around it. Using that education, you will never scale the walls because that system was put in place to ensure you do not. And it is also, when you consider all these smart men, physicists, scientists, that won't even discuss whether Apollo was faked, there is the system in plain sight. Now, if they could put down their pen for a second and say, okay, I'll put scientific method to what we've been handed, it would not be long before they screamed foul. But if they did that, they'd lose their job. They'd lose their name. They would endanger their families. There is the system. They would be defamed out of existence, and that is what stops the pen from ever being laid down and continuing to write the system-taught rules. So, I mean, there it is. But for those of us who are not afraid and will look, there's a lot more to know than you were handed in school. And it's a whole other world. And frankly, so much of it is so hard to even consider possible that if you are not able to hold an open mind and continue to look, you'll never get there. You'll just come to a point where you say, I will not let go of everything I've learned all my life. I will not just jump off a cliff like that. And what I would suggest is just keep an open mind. Just keep looking. Don't dismiss it. Just look. Don't believe it. Don't buy into it, but continually look. And hopefully at some point you will see that thing that allows you to say, wait a minute, there is truly something going on here. So.
Yeah, and we are getting really deep, and you're doing a lot of really deep level research, and there is some speculation involved. There just has to be. But I like the way you're going now, and I think as long as your approach is always honest, which it always seems to be, and you're never trying to mislead anybody, I think people will be willing to take the journey no matter how far and weird it gets, even if there are some stumbles and some things that need to be recanted because you talked about them too soon or whatever, or something gets disproven. Even with those stumbles, if the journey is honest and at the core, you're not trying to just sell something and you're really just being inquisitive, which, is the case, I don't think people will have a problem taking that journey, man. I'm really excited for where this stuff is going.
Well, this is the thing. If I end up being wrong on certain things, I'm okay with that, and I will own that. I will own that in public. It doesn't matter to me because there is absolutely no doubt in my mind that it is one massive system of control. And whether or not I have named this nut or that bolt correctly, if that turns out to be the case, I'll say I'm sorry. I misnamed a nut or a bolt. But what I'm telling you is there is a system of control around us that has always been here as far back as I can recognize. I guess that kind of takes into account how much of our history is even worth reciting, and I do it all the time just to try to make a point, knowing full well that with a system like this, look at Google. They've been scanning books into digital form for years, day and night now. There's going to come a time before long when all the past books are scanned digitally. Then all you got to do is say, any reference to lunar wave now becomes albedo.
Yep.
Any reference to secret society now becomes unknown persons.
Right.
Any reference to the sky will now be heaven. This kind of thing. And that is such an insidious thing. And yet when we look back through history, we even have people like Napoleon. History is a lie agreed upon, and we presume that man was in a position to know. But when you consider moon landings and stuff, he wasn't lying to us. It's in fact what we see. So I hope I've gotten as close as I can get, but the over macro picture, we are in a system of control, and there's no getting around it.
And you also mentioned in one of your videos, you're talking about the Russian research, and you bring up that it says in there somewhere, it mentions other beings. What's the context for that? Now you've taken me into the area I have avoided because I've filmed so many bizarre things, and I've always told people, let's start with human technology. And I'll tell you the reason I do this. The way I see it is sometime in the 50s, there began to be a concerted effort to impose on the public consciousness alien life and what that alien life should look like, and flying saucers and movies and all these things. And now Project Blue Book files are dumped. Oh my God, Ancestry.com has copyright. It's all these manipulations to ensure that they walk you up to a line that probably exists, and then they pile a bunch of manure on you. And so I have always said, start with human technology and all these things I've filmed. But Hattie Bow, he ain't afraid. He says flat out that moon that we see was put there at 18,000 BC. I'll never know that in my lifetime unless something very crazy happens and I don't see it coming. If that's true, how did he know that? And then yet we have all these places he worked in his bio that aren't even allowed to be listed. The guy doing his bio says, don't ask, I can't tell. And so you say, well, wait a minute, is this man being honest? But when you read it, you see genuine respect in his tone and tenor about this man, Hattie Bow. So what Hattie Bow said was there was this race that did this. And he even talks about, geez, what is it? Is it in the Big Dipper, or I don't know. But this is where he starts to lose me. Not lose me. I am accepting what he's saying, looking for a way
to have a common reference point to get further and say, yes, I can maybe see something there. I'm not there, but I will not disregard it. But these people, which he equates to being resembling spiders, which is funny because, you know, like in the movie Noah, you see these multi-armed things and, you know, people talking in a few places in this way. But when you think about it, it's like, damn, I can't get my head around this. You're telling me there's aliens that you're going to describe as looking like spiders. That's a bridge too far. How can I ever accept that? And yet I will not let it go. I will hold on to that and wait for the day when maybe I learn something. But as I was thinking about it, I remembered the plaque. Weaving spiders come not here.
Yes.
And as I read into his genome study that claims there's 3 genomes that have to do with your brain, maybe as much as your DNA, maybe more with your brain, that's like almost downloaded into people, it seems. And I don't know for sure because the translation's not that great, but it almost seems like the system of control is like, had some influence on brains down here. And so he's saying genotype 42, 5 billion people, they're going to be obsolete. In 2009, it will start. In 2012, when I filmed the lunar wave, it will be complete. But it's not genocide. He calls it holocaust. And so some of the researchers said, well, wait a minute, maybe he meant Holocaust, and it's a typo. But since I've got a technical background, I remembered host is always computers. Servers have this host and that host, so I wondered what that meant, and I still haven't gotten closer, but it doesn't seem like he meant pull the switch and kill them. He said phase them out is what I think he was going for. And when you look around and see how many people just cannot wake up to what's going on, I always think of genotype 42. Then there's genotype 46, which is, I think, 1 billion people or something less, not the 5 billion of the first. And those will be overwritten with the attributes of the golden billion, which is genotype, I think, 46. I think it goes 42, 44, 46. But anyhow, so there's another people just kind of co-opted by that golden billion, and those people seem to be related to the sun. And when you begin to think of the ramifications of that and how important the sun is to the ruling class, the West, the all-seeing eye, I mean, it goes on and on, you start to think, okay, the spider people, can I do anything to get back to something? Is this mistranslated? Am I missing something? But he's saying, I believe, that the brains of the 5 billion that are going to be not let to go forward have this residue in their brains or in their makeup somehow of this supposed race that he described in this way, as do the next billion in line, which will be overwritten. And then there is this bizarre reference to Jewishness. And it's a work in progress. I've addressed it the best I can. I won't disregard it, but, I mean, listen to what I've just said. What do you do with all that?
Oh, my God, man. You're blowing my mind. Oh, I just pulled out the cord of my headset. Yeah, I just pulled out the cord of my headset. Yeah, dude, I love this stuff. And, man, it's so crazy. And I had planned to ask you about the weaving spiders come not here because, of course, for people who don't know, that is what it says on the emblem of Bohemian Grove on either the gates or the door above it. And it's a very weird thing to say. I have a t-shirt company on the side. I don't know if you and I have ever talked about it, but I have a shirt that is Bohemian Grove, and it's got like the big owl statue. And along the bottom, I had put on there, weaving spiders come out here, just because it's on there. I didn't know what it meant. But, man.
Think about this, though. Some people have brought up that may be the moon behind the owl, but in many references to the owl, you always see the moon behind him, another moon link. And in most cases, we're led to believe that's the great horned owl, which is Bubo virginianus. And everyone remembers Clash of the Titans, the original 80s movie, where the little owl that they electronically made or mechanically made is Bubo. Well, they're referencing that very same owl, Bubo virginianus. And then you have the Virgin. You got the reference to probably the fall equinox when the Virgin is in the sky. There's religious overtones. There's all these things that come. But I would point out what really began to stuck out once I said, well, what the hell's a weaving spider and why aren't they allowed here? And then I hearkened back to the genotypes. The two with the spider residue in their makeup or brain or whatever that means are going to get eliminated. And some bizarre Jewishness reference. And then on top of it, the moon. The moon is always in this imagery. And some claim that that's supposed to be a representation of the moon on that plaque. I don't know, but I just wanted to insert that because now we're back to the moon again. And I'll tell you, you see endless attributions and relationships and allegory between death and our moon and sleeping. The moon is about lunatics and sleeping as well. And, Scientologists claim there's a soul catcher who zaps you with a gazillion bolts and sends you back down here without a memory, which is unnatural because human beings are supposed to be reborn with a memory. Go back to their house, go back, that's the claim. And when you think about these things, you think, yeah, why don't I know how I got here? Why don't I know how this planet got here? Why can't NASA tell me how the moon got there? Basically, we don't know jack. We're all wearing diapers. That's what it comes down to. And so, there it is.
Well said. And I love that there's a Jewish reference. I don't obviously want to get racist or anything like that, but it's clear to anyone who dives into conspiracy material that ancient Jewish bloodlines have a place in the conspiracy world. It gets into what was going on with World War II. The Nazis were all into crazy occult stuff and secret knowledge, and then they have this problem with these people, and it gets very strange. But the more I'm getting into these topics and the deeper down the rabbit hole I like to go, I'm interested in these differences in race and where this all came from. And it isn't about one person being better than another. I'm just straight interested. And I think that people get a little uncomfortable when they talk about it sometimes, and maybe that's by design, but I just think it's fascinating stuff. And just seeing that reference in there is like opens a whole nother can of worms, man.
Well, I mean, you and I, we look at a human being and we say that's a human being. We're not really concerned with what blood type they are, or their DNA, or their family name. But you better understand, brother, that the people running this joint are on a different frickin' page. They are very interested in who's got the O blood type, who's got the copper-based blood, who's got this family lineage, who's, that is in the game. And see, I don't look at it as, I see so many people saying Jewish people are bad. To me, a Jewish people is a fellow human being. We know that certain Jewish families apparently took over Hollywood and much of the media, but that is certain families. And just because they share a common religion or a common dialect or tongue, you can't lump everyone on the planet in with that. I mean, you've got to look at the source of the flame. You don't look at the woods around it that made the fire. You look at the people who are igniting the fire, and that's what we see. And there is no doubt, there is absolutely references that are hard to dismiss about blood types like blue bloods. That has to do apparently with blood that has much more copper in it, and the O blood type. And, you watch all the old movies where the kings are trying to have sons and all that whole mishmash of God knows how much of it's true. Point is, they do care, and they are well aware. I served in the military for the past couple of years. The VA has been contacting me, say, please give us your DNA so we can do DNA research and help you get better medical care. Well, I got news for you, bucko. My medical care wasn't that good to start with, and I know that your interest in my DNA far supersedes any kind of care you want to give me. And then you look a little further, and National Geographic is going around the world trying to find out who that first lady was in Africa somewhere. We need all these genes from everybody. You're getting classified. From the time you're born, they know your blood type. From these modern DNA studies, they know a lot about who's what, where they came from, and what kind of shell you're living in. So, I mean, it's an important thing, but to what I would consider an average person who just sees a living being and says that living thing has value, I don't need to poke a hole in it and find out if it's valuable enough,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, man. Amen. And when I worked at GameStop, which is the last corporate job I had to have before running the show, we would go to our store managers conference in Vegas every year, and they had a third-party company come in and do a health and wellness screening. And if you went and did the screening, they gave you $50. And it was this big thing. Everybody on the first day goes and gets their screening, and then we go out with the $50 that everybody's got and get free drinks or whatever. And everybody's like, well, I have nothing to hide. And it's like, yeah, you might not think you have anything to hide, but now they find out that you're 1 out of 100,000, and now all of a sudden you have ET abductions for the rest of your life, and they put you on the ship and they start extracting DNA. You never know. And if someone's going to give you $50 for that information, $50 $50 is easy to come by. Might want to just pass on that.
Let me tell you something. Anyone who's not aware of what is king right now, I will tell you what is king right now, besides money. It's data.
Yeah.
Data is king. And for the people running this place, money will never be a concern because in this country they make it up in a computer and then loan it at interest the next day. So they make something out of nothing. They will never have a shortage of money, and they already own so much to start with. They didn't have that problem before they could print money out of air. Point is, data is king. And as someone who's worked in the technical field and has a degree in a technical field, I can assure you, once data goes into a database, it is a cold day in hell before it is ever removed in most cases. There are very few conscientious people that are saying, oh, we're not supposed to hold on to this credit card number. We better get rid of it. No, you don't do business and you call back 3 years later and they say, oh, yeah, we got you on file. Here, you're done. They're keeping everything, and that is data. And data is the only thing that matters, knowledge, data. And with the algorithms and supercomputers, you would be shocked at what they can do. My first job out of school, getting my degree, they were doing what was called a data cube, and they could figure out if an internet ad was going to run better in a rainy town in Texas on a Wednesday if it was blue, red, or had a certain font based on disparate, information seemingly that doesn't even correlate with that, and that was way back in the 90s. So when you consider whatever a million-sided object is, not a cube, you've got to realize that it's quite possible that the average person who has let their data be taken from them on Facebook, credit cards, library cards, gas cards, grocery stores, they can use algorithms and data mining to say with a 90-something% certainty that this individual will die at this place of this cause on this day. Mm-hmm. You don't know that about yourself. So, there it is. Hold on to your damn data. It's yours.
Yeah, man, I'm just loving this conversation. But man, Crow, another great time talking to you. What started as what was going to be just a little update is now a full show, which is great for me. It makes my job easier, but I really appreciate your time and everything. What's next in this saga?
Well, some personal concerns immediately. As many know, I've been writing for, I guess, what passes for an online paper. At this point, I am forced to not be able to put any of myself into my writing. And many people who have followed me are dying to have a place where I can write in a public forum, like some place that has writers and articles. I'm really looking for a place that would let me write articles about the things that I think are important in good taste, not off the deep end of the swimming pool, but still addressing the things that I think are important. So that's my first concern. Secondarily, in terms of my work, we have just passed the equinox. I believe that portion of what Hattie Bow tried to tell me before he died in 2011 is true. I can see it with my own eyes that the Earth is dumping tremendous amounts of energy, and then the adversary down here decided to fire up CERN to create a big bang, which we were told is what created this place. Now, the irony, I guess we touched on, what if these guys are trying to break free from something? That would be a true irony. But in the interim, we're not being treated very well, and we're not being honestly dealt with. So that will be my goal. And I have reached a point where I feel like my feet are standing in a pan of boiling water, and I fear for everybody because the game is rigged, and we don't even not just have a good hand, we don't have any hand. My main thing is to hopefully allow people to think about what's being said and consider it and try to go out with their own personal experience and see if there's any value in what's being said. And that's all we can do as human beings. There it is.
Right on. And as far as writing goes, of course, I would always offer you my site, but my site is just not really geared for that. It's all about RSS feeds with podcasts. And so there can be someone who's the most enthusiastic listener ever, and they listen to it every week, every time a show comes up, but never go to my website because of the nature of podcatchers and RSS feeds. But maybe I can work on some connections, or maybe somebody out there in the conspiracy community with a much bigger platform for the written word could help you out, because I think that anybody would be foolish not to. If they have authors writing on their site and it's a typical part of their model, I think you'd be a great fit in any alternative media. And it's a shame that your employer might not see it that way, because they're going to shackle you down into maybe boring material when you've got this whole Pandora's box of amazing stuff that people are wanting to read, but they won't commit because they're corporate. It's a little sad, but hopefully someone out there can help you on that.
There's kind of a dub. See, with the Examiner, it's how I'm making my money to survive, and now it's just something other than, you know, I set out to do one thing, and what I found is, you know, that system exists to do what it does, and it's not. So what I'm trying to do is be able to bring what I've been able to gather in my lifetime to a place that's interested in basically hiring me as a writer, a journalist of some sort, or I don't know if op-ed would be a better description of that, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. That's my main problem. And at the other job, it's just regurgitating the news it's abhorrent. So,
I hear you, man.
But we've got to survive. I mean, if you can't pay your bills, you can't do research.
Right. Man, so anyone listening out there, if you enjoy what Crrow is doing as much as I do, consider some type of contribution. If you don't have a monetary contribution, at least share the show with a bunch of people so that maybe other people do, and they will be motivated to contribute, because we got to keep them going. And this is just awesome, man. We really touched on so much more than just space, and I think that makes it even better. Any plans for the rest of your lunar research, video research?
Yeah, I have some direction, but here's the problem. We're constantly stymied by weather here, to the point where there are times when we set up in a blue sky and 45 minutes later we can't see a thing. So what I'm choosing to do now is I'll be changing my locations by hundreds of miles in some cases, and not announcing where I have shot, when I will shoot, and see if there's anything to it. Because coincidence is one thing, and I don't believe in coincidence, but sometimes it gets a little ridiculous where you come outside and you can see everything, and you set up and get tuned in, and you look up, you're all, what the heck just happened? So the chem planes are always flying, and we'll see if there's anything to this. That's my plan. I'm going to go on, I'm going to jump on the donkey's back and change my location.
Right on. Well, man, we got to keep in touch. I love doing this. I think you're really onto something, and more people seem to be contributing to this area of research, and I'd like to see it increase, so I'm so psyched to see where it goes. Thanks again, man. Keep up the great work, and be careful out there.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Man, there we go. I loved it. I think our second show is even better than the first one, maybe the deepest episode yet, and we're getting pretty comfortable now, so that makes the whole show flow better. And for people who are curious about the Plus show, oh God, we talked more about the importance of the equinox, CERN, the Vatican, magic, language, Bohemian Grove, owl symbolism, some interesting threads about ancient bloodlines and blood types, Stanley Kubrick, Saturn symbolism, and the idea that it might have been our original sun, other strange models of our ancient past,